But I think you ought to really have this sort of alliance of virtues that, and it really be the CCP and its satellite countries. They had, what, 26 at the victory over Japan celebration of some of the best thugs in the world gathered together against Western civilization. And we should really categorize that. And instead of picking these personal fights or picking these narrow issues that, okay, I really don't agree with you on this color of curtain for the room that we're going to celebrate democracy in. I'm picking something really way off the wall, but your point is accurate. We can build an alliance up, and particularly on religion. You got 50 majority Muslim countries in the world, and the one country that I know of in the world that you cannot legally name a child Muhammad is China. I mean, we really, but we shouldn't be then rubbing it in their face and, well, okay, we're going to measure you on these sort of indexes and that one. We got a much bigger fight on our hands with the Chinese Communist Party, and we ought to wake up and say, okay, we got a big gorilla here in the room we got to take on.
Years ago in the Obama administration, when they were working on China, when they were working on Cuba, I had a few friends in the Obama administration. You know, they were trying to work things out. And I remember having a unique conversation with somebody on the National Security Council. I don't want to get him in trouble. And he told me, he said, Mark, the Pope's front running us. In other words, every time when we go in and push the Cubans on something, Francis people come back and say, oh, no, we're fine with that. Don't worry about it. In other words, you know, we want this person released. We want this religious freedom. We want this. The Catholic Church basically got ahead and front running it. So the thing is that when you're talking about everybody coming together, we have Muslim nations that are very close to China in terms of economic ties, military ties, repression ties, and they don't say much. The Uyghurs are almost completely abandoned by the Muslim world.
Yes.
You're a senator and a governor. I mean, you understand retail politics. Where have we come to in the U.S. where this could become a retail political issue? In other words, where people would start saying again, hey, what's going on? And I hark back to it. And, the fact of the matter is Catholics used to really care. I mean, I was talking to Paul Wolfowitz. He talks about, he's friends with Jimmy. And Paul said, he goes, the Pentecostals, look what Reagan did with that.
Yes.
And there was tremendous political pressure in it. And we see it. What's the retail politics of this for us?
That's what I'm arguing with this book, is that we need to start a long-term strategic strategy of our confrontation with the CCP. It may have to endure for decades like we had against the Soviet Union. You're going to have to sell it to the American public. Well, how do you do that? Ronald Reagan traveled for, what was it, GE, Western Electric?
Yeah, right.
Traveled the country ahead of time talking about the godless commies and what they were doing to the evangelicals, the Jews, and he traveled America talking about that. And the American people are saying, why are they doing that? I don't like that. I mean, this is a nation founded on religious freedom, and it still resonates very deeply. That's why we do in the book, basically, we cover just these stories of of people of faith, like Peter Shu was one of the Billy Graham of the China, called him at the time. And you just tell them the story. That's what Reagan, I don't know statistics, but it's always the story. It's Pastor Pan in the Mayflower Church that had to sneak out of China and get to Thailand and eventually now in Midland, Texas. Well, why? Well, because of the godless commies and these pastors that get disappeared. Why? Well, because they are against Christians. They are against any people of faith. And take it retail to the American public and say, this is a regime we shouldn't be dealing with. We should break these economies apart. We should realize they are evil. This is an evil empire, and we are going to confront them. And we need the backing of the American public. And you may pay a little bit more for your goods and services because they're not coming out of China, but it's going to be well worth it rather than them running the world. I think there's all sorts of retail political value in this through the stories of what's already happened to people like Jimmy Lai, Pastor Ezra Jin. I've been on shows with his daughter, and she's a fabulous presenter of what's taking place to a peaceful Christian pastor.
Ambassador, when you were writing the book, I know you've been dealing with this topic for decades, and topics around it, and you've written about it and spoken about it a lot. But was there anything that surprised you? And obviously, when you sit down and actually have to pump out 50 or 60,000 words on a topic, you really get into it.